while Tehran claims to have shot down a second Israeli F-35 fighter jet, which it calls invisible. Why does Tel Aviv remain disturbingly silent? The intense game of invisible death is becoming the most dangerous fuse on the powder keg in the Middle East. Only 24 hours ago, Israeli warplanes tore through the night sky in the early hours of the 13th, launching large-scale airstrikes on the Iranian hinterland of Tehran and other cities, targeting nuclear facilities and military targets. Explosions shook the earth, and Iran reported that the airstrikes caused a large number of casualties. In response, the Iranian media announced later that evening that its air defense forces had shot down 2 invading Israeli F-35 stealth fighters, and even captured a pilot who had parachuted out of the plane, although this key detail was immediately and categorically denied by the IDF spokesman. As the results of the battle were foggy, Iran made a high-profile display of evidence. 14 On the 14th of April, Iran's Tasnim news agency posted a set of photographs of alleged F-35 wreckage on social media, in an attempt to support the claim that it had shot down the 2 jets the previous day. More notably, the news agency continued to issue war reports on the same day, claiming that its air defense forces had once again shot down an Israeli F-35 warplane intruding into Iran's airspace over western Iran, and emphasizing that the pilot of the downed warplane had ejected and escaped, and that his whereabouts were unknown. In the face of Iran's successive high-profile claims, Israeli officials, in addition to consistently denying the loss of the F-35, have remained intriguingly silent on this latest result. On the same day that Iran announced the downing of the second F-35, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, through an unusually harshly worded statement aimed directly at Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei, he warned, Iran is holding its population hostage, and this will lead to one consequence: they, and especially the residents of Tehran, will pay a terrible price for Iran's blatant aggression against Israeli citizens. Katz was even more unabashed in his devastating threat: if Khamenei continues to fire missiles into Israel's rear, Tehran will be turned into a sea of fire. This naked talk of urban destruction pushes the stakes of the confrontation to breathtaking heights. The tussle in the low-altitude arena is equally deadly. Officials in Iran's Ilam province confirmed on the 14th that the province's airspace had been violated by a number of drones and aircraft on the same day. Iran's national defense system responded quickly and successfully shot down 3 Israeli drones in different areas. Officials noted that the province had suffered a number of Israeli strikes the previous day, but the situation has returned to calm, with the local armed forces and defense system on high alert and ready to repel new incursions. From high-altitude F-35s to low-altitude drones, every fragment of this offensive and defensive war covering the entire airspace is intensifying the intensity of the situation. Iran's top brass made an emergency change of generals to deal with the specter of war. 14 On the 14th of November, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei swiftly appointed Brigadier General Said Majid Musavi as the new commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force, replacing General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, who was killed in an Israeli airstrike on the 13th. Hajizadeh, a central figure in Iran's missile and drone programs, and a close comrade of Quds Brigade Commander Soleimani, was decapitated in a heavy blow to Iran's military system. In his statement of condolences, Khamenei vowed that the Israeli regime will repent for its crimes, and Musavi, who has been appointed to the post, faces the most urgent task of integrating the battered air defenses and organizing a response to Israel's destructive threats. From the stealthy F-35s at high altitude to the drones attacking and disturbing at low altitude, from the fall of key generals to the threat of a sea of fire aimed directly at the other side's capitals, every strike by both sides raises the stakes, and every retaliation compresses the space for peaceful maneuver. The tense atmosphere that permeates the streets of Tehran and the preparatory commands in the underground bunkers of Tel Aviv speak in silence of the heavy pressure that this land is under. When the warning, into a sea of fire, is no longer just an empty threat, but a sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of millions of civilians, the sky of the Middle East has never been so heavy and dangerous. The real damage to the F-35s has become the biggest mystery of the conflict. The photographs of the alleged wreckage displayed by Iran have sparked a huge controversy in the military analyst community. Several Western military experts have pointed out that the twisted metal parts in the images lack the diamond-shaped outline and stealth coating characteristic of the F-35, and are more like fragments of an old MiG fighter jet. However, it is undeniable that the Israeli Air Force did take rare losses. Open-source intelligence shows that at least one F-35I was hit by missile fragments when breaking through Iran's Western air defense network, and its damaged state and ultimate fate have become the core bargaining chips in the psychological warfare between the two sides. The focus of the Israeli airstrikes was directed at Iranian nuclear facilities. The uranium enrichment plant in Isfahan and the Natanz underground nuclear site were hit by precision drilling bombs. Satellite images show that some of the above-ground buildings collapsed and ventilation facilities were severely damaged. But the real decisive effect of the strike was still deep underground. Iran's decades-long Great Nuclear Wall is made up of multiple layers of reinforced concrete and blast doors at a depth of 80 meters. Did Israel use the latest bunker buster GBU-72 bomb? Anonymous Pentagon sources said that the Israeli army tested a new kinetic energy penetration technology in an attempt to destroy Iran's underground centrifuge halls. The true extent of the damage to the nuclear facilities will have a direct impact on the scale of Iran's next retaliation. On the streets of Tehran, the Revolutionary Guards are secretly deploying mobile anti-aircraft missile launchers. The equipment is hidden in civilian trucks and warehouses, ready to respond to an Israeli decapitation operation. Videos circulating on social media show Baathi militias setting up roadblocks at major intersections, and the number of checkpoints has spiked threefold. The international community is engaged in desperate diplomatic maneuvering. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov flew to Tehran urgently to propose a common defense commitment. In exchange for Iranian restraint, Chinese envoys are shuttling between Tel Aviv and the Gulf states to push for an urgent dialogue on the NWFC, and the US is caught in a dilemma. The Biden administration, on the one hand, passed a secret message to Iran through Qatar to avoid escalation and, on the other hand, authorized the urgent delivery of $1.8 billion worth of precision-guided munitions to Israel. The UN Security Council convenes an emergency session, but is again paralyzed by disagreements among its permanent members. The World Food Programme warns that the Middle East has only enough wheat reserves to last 45 days, and that any port blockade or tanker attack will lead to catastrophic famine. Israel's wartime cabinet is lit up all night. On the Prime Minister's desk is a battle plan, codenamed Operation Firewall, which includes a sequence of strikes against 200 key targets in Tehran. The director of military intelligence warned that Iran has fueled its Sub-3 medium-range missile, which has enough range to cover all of Israel. Meanwhile, within Iran's Supreme National Security Council, a heated debate erupted between hardliners and pragmatists. The Revolutionary Guards called for an immediate missile strike on the Haifa chemical plant, while the diplomatic faction favored consuming Israel by proxy. Khamenei finally ruled, the right to a full counterattack is reserved. As the nuclear shadow and the fires of vengeance intertwine over the Middle East, the world watches with bated breath as these two arch-enemies engage in a deadly tango at the precipice of war. Every second of silence could be the last quiet before the storm, and every flash of light that breaks through the night sky could ignite an irreversible disaster. In the nick of time, the value of reason and restraint transcends all calculations and becomes the most vulnerable guardian of human civilization.